Hey everyone, Julian here, and today I'm going to be showing you how to make warp synths like Arca. This is what we're going to create. So I'm going to be giving away the project file and MIDI and all that kind of stuff from this video in the description for free, so make sure to pick that up. And yeah, let's dive in. So the first layer we have here is this little drone I made with Operator, which sounds like this. So this is just kind of like this uneasy chord that sort of plays underneath everything. And so what we have here is, like I said, it's a drone. So it's just something that plays over. In this case, it's the whole 8 bars. If you were going to make this a full track, you can make this as long as you wanted. But yeah, it just kind of sits over top of everything. And I like to think of it as like musical texture. Like if you listen to it without it, it still says what it's trying to say. But when you add this, it just gives it more depth and more, like I said, like musical texture essentially. So yeah, so the notes on this, basically what I have it doing is it's playing F sharp, and then it's playing F sharp an octave up, and then G, which is a semitone above. And that's what kind of creates that like uneasiness. Like that G is kind of sticking out in a weird way. And yeah, this is definitely like a technique I recommend trying. Like if you literally just make a note and then put a note an octave up and then put a note either a semitone higher or lower than that, you'll get like a cool kind of like uneasy thing. And this is definitely something that Arca does a lot. Like you hear in his music all these different kinds of like droning sounds that just sound like sort of dissonant sometimes and kind of like off. And yeah, this is how you get that kind of sound. So then for the synth sound, what we have is, like I said, I made it in Operator. So I have 3 oscillators. They're all 3 sine waves, I believe. Yes, they're all 3 sine waves. And then the second one, I have the coarse pitch at 2. Third one, I have the coarse pitch at 4. And then after that, I just have the LFO on there. You can see I have the amount pretty low. And that's affecting the pitches, so it's just giving it a bit of like a pitch kind of warble. I talk about this a lot if you've seen my other tutorials. Essentially, yeah, just putting this like little bit of LFO on the pitch can give you like a nice vibrato effect, which for this was cool because since it just plays the same notes for like a really long time, you can actually kind of have it sort of like warbling in and out and it'll be fine, as opposed to like, you know, a lead or like an arp or something like that where it's more dynamic. So yeah, so then after that I have this auto pan, which you can hear. It's just affecting the volume if I turn it off. So yeah, so the way that I set that up is basically I turn the phase all the way down, and then when you do that, what it does is it just affects the volume. So like if you have the phase at like 180, for example, and it's panning, all that it's doing is it's just turning the left and right ear up and down, and then that's what creates the panning effect. But if you set the phase to 0, like I said, it's mono, it'll just affect the volume, and you can get this cool kind of like just a little bit of volume modulation. And you can see I don't have it synced. I kind of like doing that for this style where you want it to be more like kind of off and just sort of random, I guess is how I would put it. Yeah, it just helps to kind of introduce some sort of like weirdness if you don't have it synced to the BPM and it's not doing like perfect 8th notes or 16th notes or something like that. So then after that, I just have this reverb. Not really too much to say about the reverb. It's pretty simple. It's just some reverb. But I will say, it's important to note that I have the decay time up pretty high, which is pretty important because when this synth kind of goes in and out with the auto pan, then those really long reverb tails, that's when you really hear them. Versus if I had like a short decay time, it's not really the same. So yeah, so then the next sound that I have here is this bass, which sounds like this. So this is a pretty straightforward kind of respace sound. I wanted to make one that was a little bit different, and I'll explain that in a moment when I sort of go through the sound. But yeah, so for the notes here, it's just playing this thing pretty straightforward. It just kind of worked in the key of the drone. And like, yeah, it just sort of goes with that like uneasy kind of feeling. The thing about this bass line is that it wouldn't necessarily be super dark on its own, but then when you add that drone and like stuff like that arp, it kind of dictates like where it's gonna go. And yeah, so then for the sound here, like I said, I was going for like a respace, but just like a little bit different. So I'll show you how I kind of got that. So what we have here is we have 2 saw waves in analog, and then I have the detune on the second one up a little bit. That's what's giving it that motion. And then I have a low pass filter on that. So here's without the filter. And then with the low pass, like I said, pretty basic respace sound. But I did use LFO1 on the frequency modulating the frequency of the filter. So you can see here I have it at like 0.33. It's not super high, but you can hear that. Like the filter kind of opening and closing. And if I turn that off, yeah, it just kind of stays in one place. So this is a nice trick to kind of make your synths like move more and just sort of bring them to life. If you have like a long held out bass like this, putting an LFO on the filter frequency, or even like anything, like you could put it on a lot of stuff. You could put it on like the detune if you didn't do it a whole lot. You could put it on the volume. I mean, there's a lot of things you can do to kind of add some movement to your sound. So that's the purpose of that. Essentially, it's just opening up the frequency of that filter, you know, throughout the track, and yeah, keeping it moving. So then I have the amplitude envelope on that set like this, and then finally, the last thing I have here in analog is this Unison. So I just added some Unison to the sound. I have the voices on 4, and this I feel like gives it a bit of a different vibe because the Unison in Ableton's analog sounds very unique, if we could put it that way. Like, it just has this really interesting kind of sound. And yeah, I feel like it makes this like a bit more kind of like solid and like, or I would say it makes it sound more like digital and like powerful. As opposed to like without it, like a regular respace. It's very warm and like sort of analog sounding. So yeah, so then after that I just have a bit of chorus, and then I have a saturator. So just kind of use the saturator in the chorus. The chorus is just to bring out the stereo with a little bit more, and like to sort of bring out that detune sound as well. You can hear when I turn it off, it's not as like watery or like warped sounding. And then yeah, the saturator, pretty straightforward, just adds some grit to it and add some distortion. This is kind of important because one thing that Arca is very good at doing is using like basic synth sounds like this, like a respace or something like that, and then just kind of taking them into like another dimension. And so a good way to do that is with some saturation when you have like a bass like this, because you can really add some nice kind of harmonic content that'll make it really thick and add some nice grit. So then the next sound that I have here is this lead, which sounds like this. So I'll talk briefly about the notes here. It's basically just playing this pattern that kind of like fits with the bass and the drone. I didn't want it to just follow the bass, so I have it kind of like ascending when the bass is descending. And then if you notice, it descends when the bass ascends. Like that. So, you know, it's just a matter of trying to like program something that works really well with the bass line, but not like just following the bass, because it's a lead. And with Arca's music, especially because he has lyrics a lot, but he's a lot of times trying to sort of get his message across with just synths. So having like a really warped kind of like, I guess, more textured sounding synth like this that's playing something that's really different from the bass, and then also this drone. Yeah, it really helps to just kind of like say what you're trying to say, I suppose, with the song. So the way that I made the synth sound was with analog. Basically what we have here is I have a saw wave, and then I have a square wave, and on the square wave I messed around with the pulse width, and I have LFO2 on that. So it's pretty similar to what I was saying with the bass. Like this LFO just kind of moves the pulse width, and I don't have it re-triggering, meaning like when you have this re-trigger on, essentially every time you play a note, it re-triggers the LFO, meaning the LFO starts over. When you have it off, it just keeps moving even though you're playing new notes. So yeah, it just kind of, you know, does that little bit of movement. Like I was saying with the respace, having an LFO on the filter, like, yeah, it's just a nice way to give it some motion. So then after that, I have this low pass filter here. You can see I have the envelope on there, pretty heavy. And yeah, this honestly isn't making a huge difference, but what it's doing is just when it does get to those lower parts of the filter sweep, yeah, I feel like it gives the notes more like space. Like without it, because it's such a spacey synth, the notes kind of like blur into each other. But I feel like when you have this filter on there, it just kind of helps to differentiate a little bit more. So then I have the amplitude envelope set like this, so just very similar to that filter envelope. And then finally, I have actually quite a bit of vibrato, and then I have some unison in here. So on the vibrato, I have it at 73%. That's what's giving it that like really warped sound. So yeah, and then I have the Unison there, just kind of like making it sound more digital, I guess. So then after that, I have this grain delay. So grain delay is a pretty important effect if you want like the Arca sound. He uses it on a ton of different stuff, on like basses, percussion, leads like this. It's just a really good way to add some weirdness to your sound. So the way that I use it here is basically I have it not synced, and I have the dry wet at 30%, and then we have the pitch at 12, meaning an octave, and then I have the spray set there. So what I'm doing here is essentially I've got these really fast delays that are pitched up an octave, and then the spray is what's making it sound kind of like granular. You can honestly probably turn this up a little bit more, like to there. But I just kind of have it set like that. And yeah, so then after that, I have a bit of echo. You can see I have the ears not linked, and they're doing like really fast times. So this is just a good way to give it like some stereo width. When you don't link the ears, like, and they're playing different delay times, it can give you like this really cool stereo width effect. So yeah, so then after that, I have the Saturator, which is actually going pretty heavy. If I turn on this dry wet, yeah, it's doing a lot, but I only have the dry wet on 8%, so it's just kind of like adding a little bit of grit over the top of everything. And yeah, when I turn it off, you can hear it just doesn't have that same kind of like warmth. So then after that, I have this other echo, which is doing quarter notes. So this is more of like a long kind of delay. If I turn it off, you can hear like it's just kind of helping to wash the sound out a little bit more and make it more kind of spacey. And then after that, I just have a bit of reverb. Pretty straightforward and obvious there. And then finally, I have an EQ8 cutting out the low end because all of these effects can add a lot of like kind of nasty low end to the sound. And yeah, I just wanted to cut that out and make way for the bass. So then the next and final sound that we have here is this little ARP, which sounds like this. So what I was going for with this ARP was, again, I just wanted something kind of like uneasy because I started with this drone. And obviously, the drone is nothing but uneasy. But then I made this bass line and this lead, and honestly, those aren't like too dark. Like they didn't really fit the vibe of the drone. If you play them on their own, essentially, they would have a different mood. So I wanted to add something to just kind of like really solidify the darkness, I guess. And yeah, that's what this is doing. So basically, it's just playing this little arpeggio. Yeah, it just kind of fits that like uneasy mood that I was trying to establish with the drone. And yeah, so then for the sound here, what I have is I made it with analog. So we have two saw waves. One is up 3 octaves and one is up 2 octaves. So they're essentially an octave apart. And then on the first one, the high-pitched one, it's important that you do this on the higher-pitched one if you're trying to do this at home. But essentially I have this pitch envelope. So the pitch envelope is only on that first oscillator. So this is what kind of differentiates this, because usually you would use a pitch envelope on, yeah, like on both oscillators. But doing it on just one here, I'll let you kind of hear as I turn it on. Yeah, you can hear it just gives it like this really, really cool kind of pitching effect where it doesn't like throw the whole thing off. Like if you put this on the second oscillator as well, like a similar pitch envelope, kind of throws the whole thing off. But just having it on one really allows you to kind of like, yeah, still have that weird kind of like wonky pitching sound, but without having too many problems of it being out of tune. So then after that, I just have a bit of a low pass filter, I guess. And then I going into amp envelope, which is set like that, just default. And then yeah, that's it for analog. So then after that, I have this echo here. You can hear it's just kind of adding a little bit of like an analog kind of sound. The thing is with this sound, I don't have any kind of like coloring things. As like I don't have a saturator or even like any chorus or anything like that that would sort of change the quality of the sound. So I'm using this echo to kind of add that color because the echo does have like an analog kind of feel to it. And yeah, then after that I just have a bit of reverb and EQ8 cutting out the low end. So that's pretty much it for this one. Like, you know, I really just wanted to show you some kind of techniques to make the synths. And not just make like basic synth sounds, but make them a little bit more warped and a little bit more weird sounding like Arca. And yeah, so that's me for this video. Make sure to let me know what you think of this video in the comments, and make sure to like this video as well as subscribe. You can check out my sample packs in the description, and you can also pick up this sample pack from this video in the description, so make sure to get that. You can check out my social media as well, which is on screen now. And yeah, thank you again, everybody, and I will see you tomorrow with another tutorial.